Hey guys, Naterz here, and in this video I am going to be going over a section of Warner that I feel is often overlooked, that being Warner Animation, which I'm going to point out that for some reason there are actually two Warner Animation groups, one of them being Warner Bros. Animation, and the other being Warner Bros. Pictures Animation. Apparently, the differences between the two is actually that the Pictures version started in 2013, only focusing on putting out movies. Before 2013, the regular animation group was putting out both movies and TV shows. They are now only focusing on TV shows. Or at least that's what I thought, because looking into the future of the company, they are still putting out a few movies, with a Looney Tunes movie coming up, as well as a Lord of the Rings movie. So I'm not honestly very sure what the difference is between the two studios, but in this video I will mostly be focusing on movies, with a couple exceptions. So let's travel back to one of their first animated movies, Cats Don't Dance. I think that Cats Don't Dance is a very charming movie, and I think that a duo between Max and Darla would be awesome to see get into the game. Darla is a pretty small character, around the size of Gizmo, while Max is a pretty large character. I'd imagine that Max would do most of the fighting, while Darla is taking all the credit for it, looking pretty and whatnot. See, in the movie, Darla is a movie star, a very crooked one, which also is worth mentioning. Max and Darla would add to our villains list and woman in the roster, an area that is lacking just a little bit. I think that Max would obviously be a heavy hitter. As for size, he would probably be smaller than the Iron Giant, but not by a ton. Probably a good in-between of Shaggy and the Iron Giant. I do think that Darla could totally have some attacks too, and probably should, but she would do a lot less damage than Max would. I think that a big plus small fighting duo is a really neat concept, and as far as I know, not something explored a ton in platform fighters. I think that it would be really neat if the devs decided to add a fighter from an older, underrated movie. Warner has a lot of hidden gems, and I'd love for them to explore them. Speaking of underrated gems, I think that Kangaroo Jack fits that category pretty well. There actually have been two Kangaroo Jack films. The first one was a live-action film, the second being an animated film. Warner Brothers Animation was behind the second film. I actually like the movies a lot, and I think that Jackie Legs in MultiVersus would be awesome. Although the first movie didn't give us a ton to work with, the second movie definitely did. He has an insane amount of costume potential, purely due to one clip where he dresses in outfits from all around the world, and also is given more moveset potential than the first movie gave him. He is seen boxing, which would definitely be worked into his moveset somehow. He could also have some regular punches, an uppercut, and some other moves from the whole fighting sequence. He slams a radio down and breaks it. I'd imagine that it could maybe send a shockwave and deal damage to the opponents that get hit by it. He also does this thing where he takes the earth and throws it with his tail. Maybe the devs could take some creative liberties and make it like a globe beach ball or something. He also could kick forward a cart of food. If the cart hits an opponent, then the food would fly upward, allowing for more combo potential. It also could be a pretty good move in a 2v2, as the flying food could hit and damage the other opponent. I also wanted to bring up my idea for a gimmick that he could have. It does come from the first movie though, which isn't an animated movie, but it's still Jackie Legs, so I'm going to talk about it. In the first movie, he sort of steals Lewis's jacket. Lewis has 4 items in his jacket when Jackie steals it. He has a Twizzler, a spicy jawbreaker, a yo-yo, and a wad of cash. Which, if you have not seen the movie, the main characters are trying to capture Jackie to get the money back. So, for my idea, Jackie could have a move where he reaches into his pocket. I called it Pocket Pluck. It would then be RNG on which item he gets. If he pulls out a Twizzler, he would eat it and heal himself a little. If he gets a spicy jawbreaker, he would deal a bit more damage and be a bit faster. In the movie, when he eats the spicy jawbreaker, the spice sets in and he starts frantically jumping around. I think that this could be shown in MultiVersus with him dealing a bit more damage and being faster. If he picks up the yo-yo, it would be a bit interesting. When Jackie presses a move, it will end with him outstretching a yo-yo in the direction the move was originally pressed in. So it would give him him a bit more range. It would only last for a certain amount of time and cannot extend moves above him, as the yo-yo would immediately come back down and damage himself if he tries. The wad of cash, however, is the negative to this move. In the movie, if Jackie happened to take the cash out of his jacket, it would have messed the whole movie up, because the main characters would not be able to get the cash back. So if Jackie happens to pull out the cash in the pocket pluck move, it will deal damage to him. So the pocket pluck move is a bit risky, but can also pay off if you get something good. I think that Jack would be a very unique fighter, and I'd love for him to be included in MultiVersus. Both of the characters that I talked about are characters that are not requested a ton. But what about someone who is highly requested? Well, the Animaniacs definitely fit that category. The Animaniacs have been around for decades and are very highly requested characters for MultiVersus. And they probably have a decent chance of getting in. There have been Pinky and the Brain references here and there, so I don't think that it is out of the question that we could see the Warner siblings. But that's just it. This is a game primarily focused on Warner characters, and you're telling me that the Warner siblings aren't in it? That just feels so wrong. I'd imagine that the Animaniacs would be a 3-in-1 character, but you can also choose which one is the main Animaniac that you would play as, similar to how you can choose which Pokemon to start out with in Smash Bros. But how would they fight? Well, I think that they would have moves where they are all attacking, but also have a charge mechanic. For all chargeable moves, the amount of time you hold the button would determine how many of the Warners would attack. For instance, say you have a move where they are swinging a wooden mallet down, but it is also a chargeable move. If the button is pressed without charging, only one of the siblings would swing the mallet down. If it is held halfway to its full potential, two of them would swing it down. And if it is fully charged, then all three would swing the mallet down. The more siblings there are swinging, the higher the damage output. I think this would make a lot of sense for their character and would allow for a pretty fun playstyle as well. The Animaniacs should totally be added into the game, and I really hope that we get to see them in the near future. Osmosis Jones is a character that I see get thrown around a bit. He would definitely be a fun character for the game. In the movie, Jones is a white blood cell who also is a cop, so this gives him some weapons and basic hand-to-hand combat knowledge. He also is able to shapeshift, allowing him to dodge some incoming attacks. As for costume potential, there isn't a ton going for him. But that hasn't stopped player-first games in the past. Characters like the Iron Giant, who have very little to work with, also have a lot of outfits. So I'd imagine that they could do a lot with him. It would also be fun to me if for his crouching animation he just became a pool of liquid, as he is seen doing that in the movie. I don't have a ton to say about him. He has a good amount of moveset potential, but would definitely be a neat character to see get into the game. I honestly really hope that MultiVersus would pull some more oddball characters from their library for the roster. Well, I don't think it should be soon. I do think that it would be awesome if they did. Emmett from the Lego Movie is another character that I get seen thrown out a lot. And if you are one of the people that would like to see Lego characters get in, I'd highly recommend watching my video from 2 weeks ago on them. There were 2 things that I wanted to talk about that I had commented on in my last video. As far as I know, Warner still owns the rights to the Lego Movie. According to Wikipedia, although Universal Studios will develop and distribute future Lego films, the original Lego Movie characters and projects are still owned by Warner Brothers. It also states that the company plans to include its own franchises and characters in its run of Lego films. So I get 3 things from this. For one, Warner still owns the Lego Movie characters, meaning that Emmett and others would be possible for MultiVersus. Secondly, Universal will be using its own characters, meaning it is something entirely separate from the Lego movies that Warner made. Lastly, this is only movies. As far as we know, TT Games, the studio who has been making Lego games for a couple decades now, will continue to make Lego games. Warner owns TT Games. It also means that Emmett could show up in MultiVersus due to it being a video game. It's also important to note that the deal between LEGO and Universal literally ends next year, so there is a chance that Warner could gain the movie rights back. But that's enough talk about all the complicated stuff. What if Emmett did make it into MultiVersus? Well, I'd imagine that he would be a pretty unique character. A lot of people compare him to being the MultiVersus version of Smash's Steve, which I can see. Emmett has the master building ability. This means that he could basically build whatever he wants to fight with. I think that this would allow for the devs to make Emmett work however they want him to. He basically has limitless possibilities. Of course, there are things that you can pull directly from the movies, but there is also so much room for creative liberties, which I think is neat. I think that it would be awesome if Emmett got into the game, and it would open the door for future LEGO movie characters. I think that Unikitty, Metalbeard, Bad Cop, and Wildstyle all could be pretty cool to see get in, and a Benny spaceship ring out is definitely a must. Hopefully the devs decide to add him, as I think that he would be a great inclusion. Smallfoot is a super underrated movie, and one that I actually enjoy quite a bit. I think that Mego would be such an amazing character to see get added into the game. I may be a bit biased, as I think that a Yeti would be a neat addition to the roster, but it does definitely help that he comes from a good movie. Mego would be a medium-sized character, probably being a size in between Shaggy and the Iron Giant, similar to Max and Darla. He could maybe be a bit taller than Jason. But what about his moves? Well, I'd imagine that he would have his big person attacks where he is just hitting and stomping. But he also could have a roar move which could damage opponents. My favorite idea comes from a scene where he gets stuck in an airplane. He then proceeds to glide down a mountain and some rocket booster things kick in and propel him forward. Eventually he crashes, freeing him. In MultiVersus, I'd imagine that it could work a bit differently. If the plane move is pressed, Mego would get stuck in a plane and be propelled forward with the rocket boosters. If he collides with an opponent, the plane will blow up, freeing Mego as well as damaging the opponent. I think that pulling characters from some newer Warner animated movies would be cool, and Smallfoot definitely fits that category. But there is another movie that also fits that category. But instead of Yetis, it is about birds. That's right, I am talking about Storks. I watched Storks around the time when it came out, and I'm going to be honest, I don't remember a ton about it. It's also hard to determine which character you can choose to add from the film. I think that either Tulip or Junior are the two biggest candidates. Maybe you could even make them be a duo character, as they are constantly helping each other in the film. Or you could go with that ugly pigeon guy. I'd kinda rather not go with him though. Maybe the whole time they are fighting, they are trying to protect a baby. They think that the opponent is trying to take the baby away from them, similar to how the wolves were trying to steal the baby away in the movie. It might be a pretty out there choice, but I think that it could be really neat. And the final series that I'm going to mention is actually a show. It's called Green Eggs and Ham, and is currently on Netflix. It was made by Warner Animation, and it has been requested by a couple people in my comment section for a while. So if you have been requesting a rep from the show, this is for you. I actually don't have Netflix, so it's pretty hard for me to get a feel for how a character from this show would work. I watched a clip of the beginning of the show, and the two main characters seem to be inventors, so maybe that could play a role in their moveset. I'm not entirely sure what their playstyle could look like, but the show does look pretty good, so I definitely wouldn't mind them showing up in MultiVersus. It is also important to note that there are other Warner animated movies that I haven't had the opportunity to watch, but could also work in the game. The biggest movie that I wanted to watch, probably due to it seeming to be an underrated movie, would have to be The Quest for Camelot. I'd probably go with Devon and Cornwall, as they seem to be interesting characters. But I think that wraps up the video here. I've had a ton of fun making this one, and I do hope that all of you enjoyed it. If you did happen to enjoy it, consider subscribing. It would definitely encourage me to make future videos. Next week I plan on uploading a MultiVersus related video, so look forward to that. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.